Chapter 5. "I think we made a bad mistake," Terry whispered. "I told you not to pick him up." She peered into the rearview mirror and watched James, sound asleep in the back seat, shadows flickering over his face, head resting on the window frame, his mouth open slightly. "He looks like a little boy when he's asleep," Christina whispered, turning in the passenger seat to look at him. She turned back to Terry. "Freddy Krueger's little boy," Terry muttered, returning her eyes to the road. Night had fallen so suddenly, like a curtain being dropped. The blue-black sky seemed to hover low and heavy. The darkness felt somehow thick. "He practically killed that counterboy for no reason at all." "Shh," Christina warned. "You'll wake him up." "So what?" Terry snapped. "He's been sleeping since Sarasota. Maybe he could wake up and drive for a while. My eyes are really tired." "Well, don't exaggerate," Christina whispered. "He didn't practically kill that kid in the diner. He only pushed him." "Yeah, right," Terry said sarcastically, rolling her eyes. A sign proclaiming Highway 75 popped into the white glare of their headlights. The road curved, and a dark expanse, darker than the road, darker than the trees, came into view, an endless black hole seemingly stretching forever. "Is that water?" Christina asked, still whispering. "Yeah, the Gulf," Terry replied. "We're getting pretty close to Tampa Bay, I think. I can't wait to drop him off in Tampa." "But he's so cute," Christina protested. "He's just a big teddy bear." "A teddy bear with a temper," Terry whispered. "He's scary, Christina." "Maybe that's what I like about him," Christina said thoughtfully. She turned to stare into the back seat at him again. James moaned in his sleep and shifted his position. "He's running away from something," Terry whispered. "Something bad, I can tell." "Stop being so melodramatic," Christina scolded, shaking her head. "I told you, you've been watching General Hospital too long. Life isn't a soap, Terry." "Then why wouldn't he tell us where he's going?" Terry demanded. "Or whether he's in school or not, or anything. He wouldn't tell us anything about himself." "He's just shy," Christina replied, and then she poked Terry playfully in the side. "Come on, admit it. You think he's cute too?" "No way," Terry insisted, "and don't poke me while I'm driving." "Wow," Christina said softly. "Wow, you're certainly touchy all of a sudden." "I'm frightened, that's all," Terry replied heatedly. "Things have gone okay up till now, I mean, considering, but we didn't need him to complicate things. For all we know, he's a total psycho." "Did someone say psycho?" The voice from the back seat made Christina and Terry cry out. James laughed. "What's going on? Where are we?" He pulled himself up straight and rubbed his eyes. "Is this Cleveland?" "Ha ha," said Christina sarcastically. "You slept a long time, but not that long. We're about 80 miles from Tampa." "Great," James said, scratching his head. "I hope you two were talking about me while I was asleep." "Actually, we were," Christina confessed. Terry glared at her angrily. "Did you decide I was a bad dude?" James asked playfully. "The baddest," Christina quickly replied, turning in the passenger seat to smile at him. "Want to drive for a bit? Terry's getting a little sleepy." "Yeah, sure." James sounded surprised. "Do you have a license?" Terry asked suspiciously. "A fishing license?" he choked. "That'll do," Christina said. "I only have a temporary, which is no good in Florida, but I've done most of the driving." She shot a meaningful glance at Terry. "You're a real criminal," James said, snickering. "I'm impressed." Christina and Terry exchanged quick glances again. Terry pulled the car to the side of the highway and put it in park. She pushed open her door and climbed out. A wave of hot, wet air floated into the car. James slid behind the wheel, smiling at Christina, his green eyes flashing in a yellow light from the ceiling as Terry settled into the back seat. He reached down to the bottom of the seat, found the lever after a brief search, and pushed the seat back to make room for his legs. Then, a few seconds later, they were moving again, gliding through the inky night on the nearly deserted highway. Christina studied him as he drove. She liked his serious expression, the way he chewed on his lower lip as he narrowed his eyes to the windshield, the way his blonde hair seemed to sparkle in the light of oncoming cars. He's really handsome, she thought, in a hard sort of way, in a dangerous sort of way. It's so quiet, James said uncomfortably, drumming his fingers on the wheel. Let's see if we can get anything on the radio. He removed his right hand from the wheel and reached for the radio dial. But before he could locate it, they heard the siren, loud and close, wailing like a howling animal right behind them, and then the flashing red lights reflected in the rearview mirror, filling the car with a frightening, pulsating pink glow. "Cops," James cried, "but I'm not speeding." "I knew it," Terry cried shrilly from the back seat. We never should have picked him up. I knew it. Christina cast an accusing glance at James. Don't try anything. Just pull over, she shouted over the wailing of the siren. Chapter 6. I knew it, Terry cried, turning to stare out of the back window into the pulsating red lights. Shut up, Christina screamed, holding her hands over her ears. The car bumped onto the shoulder of the highway, kicking up gravel, then bounced through tall weeds. This isn't happening, Christina thought, closing her eyes, trying to shut out the steady siren howl, trying to shut out the world. But the siren grew louder, and then the red lights that seemed to bounce through the car faded. The car grew dark again, and the siren faded too. They watched in stunned silence as the police car sped past. In seconds, it had disappeared around the curve of the highway. The red taillights were there, tiny red eyes moving against the darkness, and then they were gone. Silence. Dark silence. He's probably just going home to dinner, James said, and laughed loudly, shaking his head. The girls didn't laugh. Finally, Christina pulled herself up in the passenger seat. Guess we panicked a little, she said dryly. She turned back to Terry. You okay? Terry nodded. Yeah, fine, she replied with some bitterness. I thought... James put an arm on the seat back and turned to face Terry. I heard what you said, he told her softly, his smile fading quickly. I didn't mean, Terry started, then looked to Christina for help. Do you think I'm wanted or something? James asked her, sounding hurt. His eyes peered intently into hers. Think I'm some kind of dangerous criminal? No, Terry replied quickly. I was just afraid. She turned her eyes to Christina. Back at the diner, you seemed so out of control. So you thought the police were after me? James demanded. Yes. No, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just scared, Terry confessed. And then she added, I'm sorry. I apologize, okay? Okay. James extended his hand and shook hands with her. Terry was surprised to find that his hand was ice cold. Was James more frightened of being stopped by the police than he was willing to let on? Well, I was sure you were speeding or something, Christina said. She put a hand on James's broad shoulder, then quickly removed it. How fast were you going? Not very fast, he said, turning back to the wheel, glancing in the rearview mirror. Only about 50. He shifted into drive and rolled the car off the tall grass of the shoulder onto the highway. On to Tampa, Christina declared brightly. And if another cop chases us, we'll give him a race, right? James laughed. Right. We'll just throw the car into turbo and bomb away from him. He lowered his foot on the gas, and the car sped into the night. Christina watched the needle on the speedometer rise. It leveled off at 60. How fast do you think this car can go? She asked. Not very, James replied, his face hidden in shadow. What's the fastest you've ever driven? She asked him, moving closer to him, studying his face again as it moved in and out of shadow. I haven't driven much, he told her seriously. My aunt can't afford a car. Christina clicked her tongue. She placed her hand on his shoulder again, testing him. He didn't seem to mind, so she left it there for a while. Poor boy, she said with mock sympathy. I hope you're not making fun of me, he said playfully, taking his eyes off the road long enough to glance at her. Who, me? Christina turned to the back. Terry was sitting straight up, but her head had fallen forward. Her slow, heavy breathing indicated that she was asleep. Christina let her hair brush against James's shoulder. He pretended not to notice. She felt drawn to him, as if being pulled in by a powerful force. He was so different from the boys she had partied with all week at the beach. He was so serious, so solid, so mysterious. The other boys were all such lightweights. They were only interested in partying and surfing and getting girls. But James was interested in... She didn't know what James was interested in. She didn't know a thing about him, not a thing. She yawned and closed her eyes. James, are you a mystery? She blurted out. I must be tired, she thought. I'd never say anything like that if I were fully awake. I'm a mystery waiting to be solved, he said. She opened her eyes to find him grinning at her. He took his right hand from the wheel. Christina thought he was going to hold her hand, but instead he reached for the radio dial and clicked it on. A preacher's voice boomed through the car. James turned down the volume. Christina arched her neck to see if it had awakened Terry. She was still asleep, her chin still lowered to her chest. James pushed the buttons till he found a soft rock station. James Taylor's voice filled the car. Christina let her hair brush lightly against James's shoulder again. The music ended. An announcer's voice came on, reading a commercial for a used car lot in Bradenton. The highway dipped, then continued straight north along the coast. The deep, dark Gulf of Mexico was out of view now, but it was there, just beyond the silent trees. "And now, a K107 news update," said the voice with just a hint of a southern accent. "Earlier today, an elderly Fort Lauderdale man was found unconscious beside Highway 95, just south of the city. His name is being withheld at this time pending notification of his kin. Police report that he was beaten with a blunt object and dragged from his car. The car was stolen. At this time, Fort Lauderdale police believe that a hitchhiker may be responsible." James clicked off the radio. He turned to Christina with a troubled expression. "I hate the news. Don't you?" he asked, very softly. Chapter 7. "I think that's my cousin's house there," James said, pointing. "No, maybe not." "How can you tell one from another?" Christina asked, yawning. "The houses all look exactly alike." Terry slowed the car. They were driving through a development of square, white, stucco Spanish-style houses, set close together, one right after the other, on small squares of lawn. "I think Paul's house is number 42, James said, squinting at the stenciled numbers on the mailboxes. "That's what I remember. 42. I was here last year sometime." "We circled this block twice," Terry said impatiently. "Circle it one more time," James instructed. "I'm pretty sure I know which one it is." Terry sighed wearily. It seemed as if they'd been driving forever. Now they were irritable, blinking in the bright sunlight, yawning, impatient to find their destination. "They think I'm staying at my cousin's," James thought, shielding his eyes with one hand as he squinted at the passing mailboxes. "They're in for a surprise." He had made his decision. He was going to ride all the way to Cleveland with them. The farther away, the better, he decided. Maybe Cleveland isn't far enough. He knew Christina would be pleased. He could tell that she was interested in him. The way she stared so intensely into his eyes, the way she studied him, the way she let her hair brush his shoulder, trying to make it seem so casual, the way she kept touching him, putting her hand on his arm as she talked. "She's definitely hot for me," James told himself, pleased. "We'll have a nice long car ride to get to know each other better. Christina won't be at all unhappy about my decision to come with them." He wasn't so sure about Terry. Terry still treated him coldly, suspiciously. He caught the unhappy glances she kept throwing to Christina, and he remembered what Terry had said. We never should have picked him up. No, Terry wasn't exactly his friend. She seemed so nervous, more than nervous, frightened. James snickered to himself. She's afraid of big bad James. Well, good. Maybe she'll be too frightened to make a fuss when I announce that I'm riding to Cleveland with them. He suddenly felt hot, uncomfortable, itchy. He scratched the back of his neck and discovered a big mosquito bite there. How do mosquitoes get in the car anyway? He wondered, annoyed. "There, 42. Pull up the drive," he told Terry. The two-story white stucco house looked like all the other houses in the neighborhood. For some reason, there is a lawn rake resting on the slanted red tile roof. In the middle of the small front yard, a lawn sprinkler was sending up a circular spray. A child's tricycle on the grass near the driveway was receiving a good shower. A gray Toyota Corolla stood half in, half out of the narrow garage to the right of the house. A red plastic wiffle bat and a large white ball lay on the driveway in front of the car. "Your cousin has a kid?" Christina asked, running a hand through her hair, trying to fluff it up. "Yeah, a little boy," James told her, staring up at the open front door. "Name's Ethan. He's cool." "I've got to get something to eat," Terry moaned. She cut the engine and pushed open her door. "At least you had a little sleep last night," Christina told her, still working at her hair. "I was up all night." "Me too," James said, pushing open the back door, shielding his eyes from the white glare of sunlight. "I'm sure Paul will let us crash here tonight." "What's his wife's name?" Terry asked, stretching her arms and legs, then trying to smooth out her wrinkled t-shirt. "Paula," James replied. "Paul and Paula," Christina exclaimed. James laughed. "Cute," Christina said, making a face. "She's okay," James said, not meaning it to sound as defensive as it did. "It's so hot," Terry complained. "Why doesn't someone plant some trees out here? It's like a desert." "It's a new development," James said, and then impulsively he said, "You want to cool off?" Terry gave him a suspicious look. "Yeah, why?" "No problem," he replied, grinning. He grabbed her shoulders from behind and began pushing her toward the sprinkler. "Hey, get off!" Terry cried angrily. She tried to pull back, but he was a lot stronger. "Get off, James, let go!" But he pushed until they were both under the sprinkler. Terry shrieked as the cold water showered her. Laughing, James let go. He raised his face to the cold water. Slipping on the wet grass, Terry ran back to the driveway. She turned and shook a fist at him. You creep! Don't you feel cooler? He asked, grinning at her, letting the water soak through his shirt. What's going on out here? A man's voice called. James turned his eyes to the front stoop. Hey, Paul! The young man let the screen door slam behind him. James, is that you? Come on out, we're having a party, James declared. Same old James, Paul said, shaking his head. Then he noticed Christina and Terry standing in the driveway. Hi, you with him? They nodded. Terry was trying to shake the water from her hair. Completely drenched, James hurried over to Paul and shook his hand. Hey, you look great, Paul. Thanks, man. You look terrible. They both laughed. Paul was tall and lanky. He wore a sleeveless blue t-shirt over white tennis shorts. He was in his late 20s, but his hair had already started to thin, leaving a wide forehead over his lively blue eyes. The tight t-shirt revealed the beginnings of a potbelly. James introduced Christina and Terry. Paul nodded to them, then turned back to James, a wide grin on his face. Not bad, man. Maybe I'll come with you. Paul slapped James a high five. The girls laughed, uncomfortable laughter. Could we get out of the sun? Christina asked. It's pretty hot out here. Yeah, of course, Paul said. Come on in. He gestured to the front door, then turned back to James. Paula will sure be surprised. All four of them started toward the house. Paul stopped and put a hand on James's wet shoulder. His expression turned serious. You been keeping out of trouble, man? Yeah, sure, James replied uncomfortably. He glanced at the two girls. They were staring at him and Paul. No, really, Paul insisted, not taking his hand off James's shoulder. You keeping out of trouble? Yeah, I said yeah, James snapped. He pushed Paul's hand away. What do you want from me? He saw the girls turn to each other and flash each other meaningful glances. I just want to hear that you're keeping out of trouble, Paul said, taking long strides to keep up with James, as James made his way quickly to the front door. You're not my father, James said sharply. He hadn't meant it to come out so angry. Why was he losing his temper at Paul already? He knew Paul didn't mean anything by it. He's embarrassing me in front of them, James thought, turning to look back at the girls. He's deliberately embarrassing me. That's why I got angry. Just chill, he warned himself. Paul's a good guy. He just never knows when to keep his mouth shut. Paul held the screen door open, and James and the girls made their way into the house. It wasn't much cooler inside. A fan on an end table beside a low couch blew hot air at them as they stepped into the small living room. Hey, Paula, Paul called. Come see who's here. We've got company. Paula emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a checkered dish towel. Her mouth dropped open in surprise when she saw James. She's as mousy as ever, he thought. Paula was short and thin, with frizzy brown hair piled up on her head. Her face was made even smaller by the oversized pink plastic eyeglasses she wore. James, you're soaking wet, she exclaimed in greeting. He smiled. Yeah, Terry and I, went for a swim. Paula playfully tossed a dish towel at him. Ethan came toddling into the room. He was about 4, chubby, round-faced, and very blond. Who were they? He asked his mom, pointing a water pistol at the new arrivals. See, didn't I bring him up to be polite? Paula joked. She pointed to James. Ethan, don't you remember your cousin James? Remember he was here last year? No, Ethan replied, keeping the plastic pistol trained on James. Sure, you remember him, Ethan, Paul said, grinning at James. No, I don't, Ethan insisted. He stared hard at James. Did you go in the sprinkler? Yeah, James replied. Dad said we're not allowed, Ethan declared. James laughed. Sorry, guess I'm in trouble. When are you not? Paula said. James started to respond, but Paul interrupted. Paula, let's get these guys something to eat and drink. From the looks of them, they've been on the road a long time. The day passed pleasantly. James was glad he decided to stop. Everyone's very relaxed, he thought. Several times he looked up to see Christina smiling at him warmly. They had an early dinner. Some pretty good fried chicken, mashed potatoes, ice cream for dessert. Paula insisted on their spending the night. It would be a little crowded, but they could manage. Christina and Terry would sleep on cots in the guest room. James would get the living room couch. After dinner, James and Paul talked in the dining room. The TV blared in the living room. Ethan was watching Bugs Bunny cartoons, calling for everyone to join him. James began to feel tense, felt his neck muscles tighten, his mouth go dry, as he prepared to ask Paul for the money Paul owed him. It had been such a nice, relaxing day. No tension at all. James hated to spoil it. But if he was heading off to Cleveland, he needed the money. "Hey, Paul," he started, trying to sound casual. He rubbed a hand through the back of his short blonde hair. "I know what you're going to say," Paul interrupted, leaning over the table, still filled with dirty dinner dishes, twirling his silver wedding band with his right hand. "Oh, yeah?" James replied. "What?" "You're going to ask if I'd be willing to take one of the girls off your hands." They both laughed. "No way," James said. He glanced through the doorway into the living room. Christina and Terry were seated on a couch with Ethan between them, watching the cartoons. James cleared his throat and started again. "It's about the money you owe me." "Hey, no problem," Paul said. He jumped to his feet. "Come here. I'll give it to you now. $50, right?" Surprised and relieved, James followed Paul into the living room. Paul led him across the room to a narrow counter in the front entry that held his car keys, some spare change, and his wallet. "Wow, that wallet is bulging," James exclaimed. With a wide grin on his face, Paul unfolded the wallet and pulled out a thick stack of bills. "Shh!" He raised a finger to his lips. "Where'd you get that kind of money?" James whispered, staring as Paul pulled a $50 bill and handed it to him. "I did a little favor for the boss," Paul told him, still grinning. "What kind of favor?" James demanded. Again, Paul raised his finger to his lips. He didn't answer. "A little favor, that's all. So I got a bonus. You ever see $1,000 in 50s before?" He held the wad of money in front of James's nose. "Go ahead, sniff it. It's real. $1,000. "Wow, that's great, Paul," James whispered. He tucked the 50 into his jeans pocket. "You did good." "Tell me about it," Paul said quietly. He folded the money back into the wallet and tossed the wallet onto the counter. James followed him into the living room. The cartoons had gone off. A local news program had come on. "I want more cartoons," Ethan demanded. "Put on a tape, Dad." "Roger Eckridge, the Fort Lauderdale man found unconscious on Route 95 last night, remains in a coma, hanging on to life at Fort Lauderdale General today," the newsman said, reading in a low, somber voice. "Dad, put on a tape," Ethan repeated impatiently. James saw that Christina and Terry were staring at the TV screen. "Police believe that a hitchhiker beat Eckridge and then stole his car. Eckridge's wife told police that her 68-year-old husband traveled a lot for business and liked to pick up hitchhikers to keep him company. A statewide manhunt has begun to find the alleged—" "A tape! Dad, a tape!" Ethan chanted. "I want cartoons!" Okay, Paul shouted. He switched off the TV. James saw Christina and Terry whispering to each other. Then they both turned to look at him, troubled expressions on their faces. "Hey, how about a short walk?" James suggested. Get some air." He started to the front door. "Anyone want to join me?" Still staring at him, the girls didn't reply. So he headed out the door by himself. Chapter 8. Later, James tried to get comfortable on the living room couch, but it was exactly 1 inch too short for him to stretch out, and no matter which way he turned, one of the cushion zippers dug into his back. He sat up, pushed away the cotton blanket Paula had given him, and let his eyes wander around the dark room. It was so hot, like trying to sleep in a hot closet. He began to get that suffocating feeling again, the same feeling he had felt right after dinner. That's why he had hurried out of the house. That's why he'd had to breathe some fresh air. That feeling followed him, tightening his chest until he started to gasp for air. But getting out of the house had helped. Walking had helped. Now in the darkness, listening to the creaks and squeaks of the unfamiliar house, he fought back the feeling. One deep breath, then another. "Please, don't hurt me, James. Please, don't hurt me." Shut up, he thought, silently screaming the words in his mind. "Please don't hurt me." Shut up. He wiped his forehead with the end of the blanket. He realized he was bathed in sweat. He was still fully dressed, except for his sneakers. Should he sneak outside for another walk? Before he could decide, he heard the creak of the stairs. Footsteps. He tossed the blanket away. He climbed to his feet. He took a deep breath. Another deep breath. Someone was coming down the stairs. Whoever it was trying not to be heard. Shadows moved near the stairway. Someone slipped into the living room. "James," a whispered voice, "are you awake?" "Christina." He took a step toward her. "Hi." He could see her clearly now in the light through the living room window. She was wearing a long white t-shirt that nearly covered her shorts. Her hair fell in tangles about her face. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered. They sat down together on the couch. She smelled lemony, James realized. He liked the smell. She leaned close to him and smiled. "I guess I'm overtired or something?" Maybe it's the heat, he whispered. Sometimes I get afraid in new places, she confessed in a little girl voice. James wasn't sure he believed her. She didn't seem to be the type to be afraid of anything. He put his arm around her shoulders. She didn't resist him. She raised her face to his. Her lips found his. Her lips were hot and dry. He pulled her closer. The suffocating feeling was gone. She smelled so lemony. Her breath was warm on his face. She moved her lips against his. The kiss lasted a long time. You're dangerous, she whispered breathily when they finally pulled apart. You're really dangerous, aren't you, James? I'm going to ride with you girls to Cleveland, if that's okay, James said. They were seated around the dining room table. Paula had insisted on serving them big stacks of pancakes for the road before they left. Christina reacted to James's news with a pleased smile. It actually wasn't news to her. He had told her the night before. The night before. He closed his eyes. He could still feel her warm face pressing against his, still feel the touch of her dry, insistent lips. Terry didn't react at all. She glared for an instant at Christina, then lowered her eyes to her plate, still stacked high with pancakes drowning in syrup. Are you going to chip in for gas? She asked James coldly, deliberately not looking at him. Yeah, sure, he told Terry. No problem. I think you should stay here in Tampa, Paul said to James, wiping his chin with a paper napkin. What for? James asked, pouring himself a glass of orange juice. Why not? Paul replied. What have you got going in Cleveland, of all places? James shrugged. We're putting up a new resort hotel, Paul said, on the 17th Street Causeway. You know, on the water. I could get you a job. No problem. A construction job? James asked, stirring his fork around in the puddle of syrup on his empty plate. Yeah, Paul said, tossing down his napkin. What's wrong with that? You too good for construction these days. Thanks anyway, James said quickly, raising a hand as if to fend off his cousin. He climbed to his feet. Christina and Terry followed his lead. We've got to go, James said. He gave his cousin a playful punch on the shoulder. You've been terrific, Paul. Think about what I'm telling you, Paul insisted. You can make some real money, man. James waved him off. They stopped in the kitchen to say goodbye to Paula. Then, carrying their bags, Christina and Terry made their way to the car. James tracked down Ethan to say goodbye. You're going to remember me next time? He asked. Ethan thought about it. Maybe, he replied seriously. Will you bring me a present next time? Yeah, okay, James agreed. Then you'll remember me? Maybe. James called goodbye to Paul and Paula again. Then, hoisting his canvas bag, he hurried out the front door. He stopped on the front stoop. He could see that Christina and Terry were having an argument behind the car. Terry was waving her arms, gesturing angrily. Christina was half sitting, half leaning on the trunk, shaking her head. They're arguing about me, James realized. Well, too bad, Terry, he thought, watching them. I'm coming along. Christina wants me to come with you, so you lose. He could feel his anger beginning to rise. What was Terry's problem anyway? He'd never done anything to her. Why didn't she like him? He stepped off the stoop and made his way quickly to the driveway, taking long strides. They stopped arguing as soon as they saw him. Christina pulled open the trunk. They tossed their bags inside. Who's driving? Terry asked, unable to completely erase the anger from her voice. I'll drive. I'm in the mood, James said. Neither of them argued with him. He saw Terry cast another angry glance at Christina as she climbed into the back seat. Maybe Terry is jealous, he thought. Yeah, maybe that's it. She's upset about Christina and me. She's jealous. Smiling over that idea, he climbed behind the wheel. He had started the engine and was about to back down the drive when he heard Paul calling from the house. Stop. Whoa, hold it. Through the windshield, James saw Paul leap off the front stoop and come running toward them. James lowered the window and called out, Hey, what's wrong? My wallet, Paul cried angrily. My wallet is missing.